protein. There's this idea that because I'm pushing my body so hard and I'm not eating animal products, that my diet is automatically deficient in protein, and that somehow I must be suffering or doing something secretly or cheating on my diet and not telling anybody. And I think that we need to take a step back and really look at this protein question, this protein issue. I call it the protein myth.
So people attribute meat as protein, but protein is one of 3 macronutrients which constitutes all of our food. There's carbohydrates, fats, and protein. All intact foods have some combination of all 3, and it's very misleading to call protein a food.
So most activists or organizations, non-profit organizations, people trying to change the world in general, have the approach that we're going to inform people first and then they will change their behavior. I think that's a very important and a necessary approach, but we should also not lose sight of the other way around, that people can change their behavior first and then they start to think about ethics and then they start to think about their attitude and get more informed.
Because people think that it's not appropriate, but at this point in the 11th hour, with the environmental and health crises that we face, it's important to educate the next generation because we no longer have time to waste. The new generation has to learn a new way of thinking and eating and living if we're going to green our society.
Before I went plant-based, I was your typical junk food junkie.
Has not seen an obesity
Throughout most of my 20s and 30s, I really overlooked health and fitness. I was very focused on my profession, building a family, doing all of these things that we sort of aspire to. And as a result, by the time I was 39 years old, I was 50 pounds overweight. But more importantly than that, I was just lethargic, I was unenthusiastic about my life. And that intersected with a health crisis. Sort of treating myself poorly for so long really caught up to me shortly before I turned 40.
I think it's the hardest thing to do is to transition to a healthy diet when we've grown up in the standard American diet with fast food prevalence and everything. I think that the best thing to do is obviously education, but not everyone has access to that. Ideally, you have access to internet and you can start researching and reading books. There's some great books we need to get into the library so people know, like, oh wait, I could just put rice and lentils together and have a full meal. That's easy and cheap and effective.
And it was a very specific moment in time when I knew that not only that I needed to change my lifestyle habits, my diet, and how I was sort of taking care of myself, but also that I wanted to change.
You really have to want it. You have to, and a lot of people come to me because they had a health scare or because they lost someone close to them for a tragic, preventable disease, and they come to me desperate, like, help me, I want to change my life. And that's when they have this motivational factor. But just to say, this is healthy, you should do this, people are like, okay, I know I should, but this tastes so good and it's cheap and it's easy and it's accessible. Vegan is on fire. There are so many delicious options. When you think about the way we eat, we've got this plate with this hunk of meat and a little vegetable and a little potato. How boring. That's boring. If you look back and now you can compare, like now I love Ethiopian food and Indian food. Those are my favorite. And I love Mexican food. And there's so many cuisines and the plates are all colorful and versatile and different textures and different flavors, different herbs and spice combinations. It's like infinite.
What we think is very important is to give people first a taste of what vegetarian food tastes like, and once they realize that this is good food, it's convenient food, it's easy to do, it's affordable, etc. Once they know that they have nothing to lose, that there's something instead of that steak or instead of that piece of chicken or whatever, then they will be more open to listen to your arguments, and then they will start to think about animal rights and all these issues. So first a behavior change and then a change in attitude.
And as I was making my way up the staircase right over here, I had to pause halfway up a simple flight of stairs. I was winded, I was out of breath, I had tightness in my chest. I was sweating, sweat on my brow, and it was a very scary moment where I thought, you know, I could be having a heart attack right now. Like, what is going on? I'm only 39 years old, and at the time, I would look in the mirror and still see that 21-year-old Stanford swimmer, even though I was carrying an extra 50 pounds around. You know, like, denial is pretty powerful that way.
Even I did a Dr. Oz episode. We took 3 women who had high blood pressure, and we put them on a plant-based diet for 4 or 5 days. In 4 or 5 days, all 3 of their blood pressures normalized. They lost 4 pounds, and their LDL cholesterol went down 42 points.
You know, in my whole life, my mother would say to me, you gotta watch out for your heart. Heart disease runs in our family. And her father had been a champion swimmer in his own right. He was captain of the University of Michigan swim team back in the 1920s. He was an Olympic hopeful. He was an American record holder. He was an amazing guy. Never smoked, was never overweight, continued to stay fit and swam in Lake Michigan his whole life, and still, nonetheless, died of a heart attack at age 54.
What's interesting is that if you go to county fairs or state fairs, you'll see that the cows are all groomed, they're combed, they're all clean and nice and fed nice hay. But in reality, it's a deception, because the cows I get, they're in mud, they're in filth, they've been laying down in feces, urine, and they come in and they're contaminated to the whole hide. They have what we call fecal balls on some right down the center line, you know, so there's contamination. So right away, the consumer, when they go to the fairs, they say, wow, that's where my meat comes from. Wow, they're so nice and clean. And that's not the case.
Most people eat meat because most people eat meat. And what I mean by that is that even if people think that there's something wrong, they think inside them that there's something wrong with eating meat, with killing animals, etc. As long as they see 98% of the other people do that, they will think that it can't be that bad, and they will think that it's normal, and they think that it's just something necessary, and that everybody, since everybody's doing it, they can do it too. So what we need is really a critical mass of people who says no. And I think the fastest way to build that critical mass is by increasing the number of part-time vegetarians, so that it gets a lot easier to become a full-time vegetarian. And then we will reach the 10%, and then from then on, I think there will be no stopping this movement.
I love Dr. Melanie Joy, and she's also a good friend of mine, and she always says, and I love this, and she talks about it in her books, that we believe that eating meat is normal, natural, and necessary, and we're raised to believe that. So it's so deeply fundamental, a part of what we think we need to do. So we need to kind of figure out what's right for us. And she always says you draw the line where you're comfortable, and once you've decided that for yourself, you can't let anyone sway you. Because I think having the information is the most empowering thing. You know, you could just say, you know, like I know a lot of people that are just like, don't tell me, I don't want to hear la 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 la, you know, I'm just gonna stick my head in the sand. Because they know, once they find out, once you know, you can't unknow.
The subtext of every meal is don't make the connection. You know, it'd be very strange for someone at breakfast while everybody's eating bacon to say, I wonder what she was like. Or you wonder what who was like. The animal, the pig we were eating. That's not a pig, that's just bacon. You know, we're taught it's so deep to just never think about that, just don't go there. And so is it what the subtext of every meal is to stay shallow, don't think deeply, believe whatever anybody tells you.
I think we're a meat and dairy addicted society and culture. I think that, you know, if you look back through the generations, certainly, you know, meat was part of the diet, but it never proliferated on our plates to the extent that it does now. It was a delicacy, it was a side dish, it was something to, you know, that was considered special.
Also Fleisch in unserem Kulturraum ist seit Jahrhunderten eine Sehnsucht, die immer den Reichen vorbehalten war. Also Fleisch war maximal eine Festtagsspeise. Und erst in den 60er, 70er Jahren, parallel zur Grünen Revolution und der enormen Industrialisierung, die auch schon Jahrzehnte davor angefangen hat, wurde Fleisch sozusagen zu einer Alltagsspeise. Erst seit den 60er Jahren können wir uns leisten, Fleisch in diesen Mengen überhaupt zu essen. Also man spricht auch von einer Demokratisierung. Das heißt, erstmalig konnten sich fast alle Schichten der Gesellschaft auch Fleisch leisten. Und dass es jetzt sozusagen so normal geworden ist, führt auch dazu, dass es nicht mehr als so wertvoll wahrgenommen wird. Also in Teilen der Gesellschaft ist über das Gemüse und Gemüsespeisen zu reden hipper, als sich über einen Schweinsbraten zu freuen.
The other thing is that there's just an enormous amount of advertising and other ways of trying to cajole people into eating these products because the profit margin is so high on them. And the other thing is that it really works very well for what I refer to as the military-industrial meat, medical, pharmaceutical media complex. You know, there's this vast complex in place that supports, again, a wealthy elite that's been in many ways in power for a long time. And they're not making money in many ways like on us as vegans. My wife and I haven't been to a doctor in nearly 40 years. You know, we don't need to buy any medical products. We don't really believe the official stories of our society.
Because that's who we're taught by. When I was in graduate school, my little handouts that would say you have to eat 3 servings of dairy a day, on the bottom corner says sponsored by the Dairy Council or the dairy industry or and on national, it was National Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Day the other day. So I got an email from the dairy industry saying, thank you, happy Registered Dietitian Day, and I get free webinars if I want. That's sponsored by the Dairy Council. I did a talk for the California Dietetic Association, sponsored by the National Beef Industry and the dairy industry, like sponsor right there. Like they pay for our continuing ed, so it's free, and they tell us, oh, it's really good for you, this is so healthy. Here's why we need our calcium and vitamin D from milk.
Oh, you know, why do people love cheese? That is an age-old question. It's also often the last hurdle for people that are transitioning to a plant-based diet. The reason it's so hard to give up cheese is because, first of all, it's absolutely wonderful tasting. People love that rich, gooey, stretchy sensation that cheese provides in a range of cuisines, but there's also a biological aspect to cheese that gets you hooked. And that ingredient that is in cheese that gets you hooked is called casomorphine, which is a natural opiate that occurs in all mammalian milk. It's even in our own human breast milk.
Because of the food industry. Today, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which I'm a member of, but it abhors me with the kind of things that they're doing. Today they gave the kids, what's it called? The Kids Eat Healthy Kids, Healthy Kids, Kids Eat Healthy, so the stamp of approval. Okay, so the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics gave the first stamp of approval to craft processed single cheeses. Kids Eat Right. The Kids Eat, it's got a symbol on it that it's healthy for kids. How misleading is that? So they have literally funded this big old ad where it makes it look healthy. It's not healthy to eat processed cheese by any means. But moms, I'm a mom, you go to the store and you see Kids Eat Healthy or like a stamp of approval from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, boom, my kids are gonna love that. So you pick it up. Very confusing. So the food industry controls our health messaging.
Really, it's a matter of emotional and psychological view and a certain type of addiction. For example, as a little child, maybe I come home, I'm maybe 6 or 7 years old, and my mother's making supper, and I smell the pot roast, and I know that's you know, my mother loves me because she's making pot roast. You know, that's what I like to eat. I know that was true for me when I was a kid. And you know, and if I come home later, you know, maybe and now there's tofu cooking or something, and I think, well, that's not what I got when I was a little kid. You know, we have these very deep memories that perhaps we're still attached to. We want to get along in social situations. We are very much looking to outer cues very often for acceptance and approval. Very often we have a self-image of someone who is a meat eater or loves cheese or ice cream. And so all these things can make it difficult, especially in the beginning, to make a transition to veganism.
We're seeing the result of that. That overconsumption is a huge contributing factor to the level of chronic disease that we're experiencing right now. When you look at healthcare in America right now, it's an unmitigated disaster. We are in the midst of an unspeakable healthcare crisis. You look at heart disease, America's #1 killer. 1 out of every 2 Americans will suffer some form of heart disease incident in their life. 1 out of every 3 deaths in America is attributable to heart disease. Obesity, 70% of Americans are either overweight or obese. Studies indicate that by 2030, 50% of Americans will be diabetic or pre-diabetic. These results, these statistics are just absolutely insane. 75% of all healthcare costs are attributable to heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and 2 forms of cancer, breast and prostate. And the great irony is that 80 to 90% of all of these chronic conditions are easily eradicated, prevented, or reversed through simple diet and lifestyle alterations. And that's where plant-based nutrition can come in as a complete win.
They're starting these kids out eating meat that's eaten Cipro in its feed every day of its life. And are we raising a whole generation of kids that are going to be untreatable if they get an infection or a virus? God forbid some kind of infection spreads.
The research shows that vegans compared to vegetarians, compared to pescatarians, compared to meat eaters and semi-vegetarians, the more meat you consume, the higher your mortality, the higher risk for cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and certain cancers. So the more plant-based you are, the less risk you have, the healthier off you are. Vegan diet is the only diet that's ever been shown to reverse disease, namely type 2 diabetes with Dr. Neil Barnard's study, and cardiovascular disease or coronary artery disease with Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and Dr. Dean Ornish's work. So we've shown that we could literally reverse chronic disease.
A friend of mine, this is a true story, raised cattle as a hobby. He's a real estate magnate. He gets an infection, goes to the hospital. He's in CPU for 12 days. They couldn't find anything. So he's dying. And they're trying one antibiotic after another, and they finally found one that saved his life. He came out and he said, I will never eat a piece of meat again. I know what's in that animal feed. I know. So you're really taking your chances eating a piece of meat that's not organic. You're really taking your chances. But here's the important thing. You might say as a vegetarian or vegan, I'm not going to eat that stuff. I'm not going to put that in my body, but guess what? It's in all of our water. It's in all the rivers. It's in everything that goes downstream from one of these CAFOs. We're going to be exposed to it no matter what. This is why it's so important we have to address this on a national scale. Everybody has to become an activist.
The fast food industry is very good at marketing. They spend a lot of money on marketing. It's very effective. They hit kids, they hit teachers, they hit schools, hospitals. There's fast food restaurants in hospitals all over the country, which needs to stop. That's so wrong. And it's so backwards because you can get a full meal for $1, whereas, you know, if you have to go out and you have to find healthy food, it costs more money, or it can cost more money. Like, even if you look at the USDA My Plate, this kills me. It's vegetables, fruits, whole grains, protein. And it's like, one of these things is not like the other. You know, it's so stupid because protein is not a food.
So it's going to take time to break down in people's minds that our food system has not been a benevolent project. It's been based on efficiency for profit.
Civilization, like mining, like agriculture, like medicine, all represented by naked and holding tools, typical of sculpture work. Now think about this.
I had treated myself so horribly for so long, so many years, with drugs and alcohol and terrible lifestyle habits and fast food and all these sorts of things. And in a mere 7 days, by doing one simple thing, I felt completely different. And I showed up back at the race in 2009. And after the swim, I got out of the ocean with a 10-minute lead on the next athlete, and held that lead all day on the bike, and finished the first stage, the first day of that race, with a 10-minute lead on the whole field. And then that's when I thought I think this plant-based diet is working out. There's something about it that I think is agreeing with me, because at the time I was 43 years old. I was supposed to be a corporate lawyer. I'd only started riding a bike 2 years prior. Like, I had no business even being there, and yet I was in the lead at the Ultraman World Championships. Like, it was crazy.
I've competed in boxing, I've competed in Muay Thai. I'm nationally ranked as a bikini competitor in bodybuilding, fitness division as a fitness model. And I also compete in powerlifting in squat, deadlift, and bench. My main protein source is seitan, which I make myself at home. It's made of Vital Wheat gluten, which is the protein. It's derived from wheat. And so it's a lot like bread making it. It just has 4 ingredients. It's wheat, whole wheat flour, water, and seasoning. And I bake it myself. And it's per serving. It has actually more protein and less calories and less carbs than boiled chicken breast, which is like the staple in every bodybuilder's diet. So I eat that a lot. And then I also drink protein shakes 2 a day. Even when I'm not competing, though, I'm really conscious about my protein intake. I'm almost like obsessed with making sure that I'm at least getting like 100 grams of protein a day. So I eat a lot of like high protein vegan food, such as the Gardein products. They're almost the same as regular meat.
And I've been doing this for almost 9 years. I've never had an issue building lean muscle mass or recovering quickly between workouts. I rarely ever get injured. I don't get sick. I continue to improve. I'm 48 years old and I still feel amazingly fit, and I'm able to go out and push my body and do amazing things without eating any meat or dairy products. Now, does that mean that I don't supplement with any plant-based protein? No, I do occasionally, but I don't look to supplements as the primary way that I'm getting protein into my diet. I'll usually do a scoop of plant-based protein that's comprised of sprouted brown rice or hemp or pea protein, but generally I do that when I'm just pushing myself incredibly hard and I know that I'm not eating that great that day.
Oh my gosh, staples in my diet. Off season, I love Soy Dreamery. I eat that like, it's probably, I probably have 8 pounds of body fat from Soy Dreamery. It's so good. What else do I really love? Yeah, I'm not usually a big junk food vegan, but I do eat Oreos and soy ice cream. And also, I really like Gardein products, like everything Gardein. My freezer, the Gardein meatballs, I actually went to every Target within about a 15-mile radius, and I bought all the meatballs. My freezer was just stocked full of meatballs. So delicious.
So nature has it hardwired that it's almost impossible to be deficient in this macronutrient. It is almost impossible, and yet everywhere you go to the grocery store, and you're being pushed this message of protein, 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 more protein, more protein, more is better.
In my 20 plus years in the health and fitness industry, I have never seen a protein deficiency. I see cardiovascular disease, I see cancer, I see type 2 diabetes, I see obesity every single day. And those are brought on by eating these processed foods, these animal products, and the standard American diet.
People are walking around eating 2 to 3 times the amount of protein that they require. If all you did was eat bananas, you would meet your RDA of 10% of calories from protein every day.
You know, if you think about protein, getting protein, and you compare the same amount of calories of protein coming from meat versus the same amount of calories coming from protein from a plant source, in the meat, you're getting stuff you don't want in your body. High levels of saturated fat, heme iron, insulin-like growth factor 1, steroids, hormones, antibiotics, right? You also get 0 fiber and 0 phytochemicals, which are 2 most important food groups possible. Like, you need phytochemicals and fiber to fight off chronic disease. That's key. So you're getting both stuff you don't want that are health damaging, plus you're not getting the stuff that you do want, which are health supporting.
And I had that moment that you hear about with people in recovery where they have their moment of clarity when they've hit their bottom and they decide, you know, today's the day I'm going to do something about that. And I had that moment, and that moment changed my life. And so I realized and was able to recognize that seizing one of these moments when it arises really can change your life. And so when that happened on the staircase, I thought, oh, this is familiar. This is what it felt like that other time that this happened. I have another opportunity to now change my life again. And you know, the fact that I was able to recognize that and seize it and take action upon that really is, you know, why we're sitting here talking today.